The first night in my new apartment, I heard it, faint singing, rising through the floorboards. It wasn't the kind of sound you'd expect in a building like mine. The place was falling apart, peeling paint, cracked ceilings, radiators that hissed and bled rust water. The walls were paper thin, yet what I heard wasn't muffled neighbor noise. It was haunting, beautiful, a hymn so perfectly in tune, it prickled the back of my neck. At first I thought it was someone playing a recording, but no stereo had that layered depth. It sounded alive, human. Curiosity gnawed at me. The next evening, I pressed my ear to the floor. The melody drifted up again, faint, then swelling, as if the whole building itself was singing. The sound was coming from below, the basement. I told myself I was being stupid, but I grabbed a flashlight anyway. The basement door was stiff, swollen from years of damp. When I forced it open, the hymn grew louder, weaving through the concrete walls. I followed it down narrow stairs that smelled of mildew and iron, every step echoing like I was descending into a cathedral. And then I saw them. Dozens of hooded figures knelt before a stone statue, wings stretched high, head smooth and featureless, a faceless angel. My light trembled across their bowed forms. They didn't react, just sang in unison, voices impossibly rich, vibrating in my chest. The hymn stopped all at once, the silence heavier than sound. Slowly, as though rehearsed, they pulled back their hoods. My stomach lurched, their throats gone, cleanly carved out, stitched shut with black thread, and yet their mouths never moved. The voices I'd heard still pulsed in the air, as if leaking from the walls themselves. But it gets crazier. One of them turned toward me, and though no sound came from his lips, I heard him in my head. "Join us." The others turned too, their eyeless stares fixed on me, the hymn resuming in 1,000 invisible tongues. My flashlight beam jittered over a tray set before the statue. On it lay knives, scalpels, surgical scissors, tools glinting like they were waiting for me. I stumbled back. One figure reached out a hand, palm up, as if offering salvation. In my mind, the words came clear. "Carve away the burden of flesh. Become the eternal voice." I ran. I don't remember how I made it back up the stairs, only that I slammed my apartment door and shoved furniture against it. That night, I didn't sleep, but when dawn came, the building was silent. I convinced myself it was some deranged ritual, hallucination, anything. Then the second night came. I woke to the singing again, but this time, it wasn't from below. It was inside my walls. The notes seeped out of the plaster, curling around my bed. I tried to scream, but nothing came. My throat burned. I staggered to the mirror and opened my mouth wide. No sound. Not a rasp, not a whisper. And beneath the silence, I heard it, the hymn pouring softly from my own apartment, as if the building had finally welcomed me into its choir. I'd been chasing dead-end leads for months, small-time stories about zoning disputes and town fairs. So when I heard the rumor, I grabbed it like a starving dog with a bone. Unfortunately, that was the wrong move. A fasting cult in a forgotten farming town. People said, believers who starved themselves for purity. At worst, it would be a puff piece about eccentric locals. At best, it could finally put my name on something bigger. I drove 3 hours out, down cracked highways and dirt roads, until I reached a place not even marked on GPS, Ashford Hollow. Fitting name. The air itself seemed burnt, tinged with the smell of smoke that never faded. The people welcomed me too easily. A woman in a faded dress clasped my hands the moment I stepped out of my car. "You've come hungry," she whispered, as though it were a greeting. Her eyes didn't blink once. That should have been the first sign of something wrong, but I ignored it like an idiot. They led me to the community hall for supper. I expected empty plates, gnawing ribs, hollow faces. What I found instead made my skin crawl. The hall was set like a banquet. Roast meats glistening, bread piled high, bowls of fruit spilling over, The townsfolk filed in silently, folding their hands until everyone was seated. Then without a word they began. Only they didn't eat. Not really. Their jaws opened, teeth sinking into food, but their movements were jerky, unfinished. They barely chewed before swallowing. Grease dripped down chins, wine-stained lips, but no one blinked, no one breathed heavy, no one shifted in their seats. But check this out. I sat at the edge, notebook clutched tight, trying to steady my nerves. At first I thought the lighting played tricks on me. Then I leaned closer and saw it. The food wasn't staying food. The bread dissolved into black dust between bites. Meat blackened, curling into flakes that stuck to their lips and teeth. Even the fruit rotted before my eyes, skin sagging and collapsing into grey clumps. Yet they smiled wide, teeth lined in soot, throats swallowing mouthfuls of nothing. My stomach churned at the smell. Burnt earth, dry and bitter. That was enough for me. I stood to leave, but a hand gripped my wrist. The woman who'd greeted me earlier, her nails dug into my skin as she gestured toward an empty chair at the center of the table. "For you," she said softly. Dozens of ash-lined mouths turned in unison. Smiles widened. The sound of chewing stopped. The silence was worse. I'm not hungry," I stammered. That was the wrong thing to say. Their voices rose together, layered, chanting in a hollow rhythm that rattled my bones. "She will be the final course. She will be the final course." The hall darkened. Lanterns flickered, dimming until only the table glowed faintly. The ash piled higher on their plates, spilling onto the floor, swirling like smoke around my shoes. I backed toward the door, heart pounding, throat dry, but no matter how far I moved, the table seemed closer. Their mouths opened wider, lips tearing at the corners, teeth rimmed in soot. The woman's hand never let go of my wrist. She pulled me toward the chair with unnatural strength. I dropped my notebook, clawing at the doorframe, but their chant drowned my screams. And as they dragged me down into the ash, I realized with sick certainty, I wasn't leaving Ashford Hollow. I was feeding it. I never should have stayed that late in the library. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as I hunched over my laptop, typing the last lines of my thesis draft. It was close to midnight. The building deserted, except for the security guard dozing in his booth downstairs. I told myself 1 more hour, then I'd leave. When I went searching for a reference in the stacks, my hand brushed against the back panel of a shelf. It shifted slightly, and behind it was a gap just wide enough for a book. The thing was ancient, hand-bound leather, its cover stiff and cracked. I should have left it there, but I didn't. The first page was filled with names, written in careful ink, each one followed by a smudged fingerprint, brownish red, like dried blood, and a date. I flipped forward. The pattern continued. Dozens, then hundreds of names. At first I thought it was an alumni record, some secret registry from the school's past. Then I saw the years, 1974, 1959, 1931. The ledger stretched back more than a century, and every single entry ended with a date of death. My stomach knotted. I flipped faster. Some names I recognized, students I'd passed in the hallways, kids who'd graduated last year. Then my blood ran cold. There were names I knew now, people still alive. Their dates hadn't come yet. One was marked for next week, another for graduation day. Then I turned the page. My name, written in dark ink. My finger froze over the bloody print beside it. And there, today's date. I slammed the book shut. My pulse thundered in my ears. This had to be some elaborate prank, some sick joke. That's when I heard the footsteps. I ducked behind the stacks as the heavy library door creaked open. A group of professors shuffled in, their voices low, almost ritualistic. Their coats hung heavy, but as they slipped them off, I saw the robes beneath. Robes stitched with symbols I didn't recognize. And knives, long thin blades glinting under the fluorescent lights. One of them carried the ledger. "Tonight's offering," he said, his voice calm, measured. "She's here." I froze. They knew. They knew I'd found it. Her name was written the moment she opened the book. Another replied. "The ledger chooses." I pressed my back against the shelves, heart hammering so hard I thought it would give me away. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I killed the sound instantly. "Find her." The group fanned out, their shoes whispering against the tile. I crept along the far aisle, trying to stay low, every muscle trembling. My mind screamed to run, but the exit was blocked. They stood between me and the only door. Now pay attention to this part. I made it to the emergency exit at the back of the library, the one no one used. My hands fumbled at the bar, locked. Behind me, a voice whispered, "We see you." I spun, and the head librarian stepped from the shadows. Her smile was serene, almost motherly. The knife in her hand gleamed. "You read your page," she said. "Now it must be fulfilled." The last thing I heard before the lights went out was the scrape of dozens of feet moving closer and the sound of the ledger snapping shut. Thanks for listening. Now close your eyes and sleep.